All right.
Here we go.
We have a mic too. We're all set up now. Okay, so we're going to take a second and go through today some collaboration that we did between myself at AT&T and Ryan from Zappy and Jeff from Added Value. So I'll go ahead and start taking you through it. So as most of you know, AT&T is the largest social advertiser in the United States and one of the top 10 globally. We're the #1 spender on Facebook and the #1 spender on Twitter. We're constantly evolving, constantly pushing ourselves to think differently in the social space. How do we reach more people? How do we actually change perceptions of AT&T among these audiences? How do we think about millennials and how do we think about the next generation and what AT&T should mean to them? And so when you start to think about that in the social space, there's 4 things that come to mind from a metric standpoint, right? There's social listening, there's brand fans, engagement rates, and customer care. These are all traditional approaches to social analytics, what you would typically think of, right? And they work fine. They're fine for us too. We use them all the time. For us internally, so you know, there's a customer care group. So if you say something, if you go to an AT&T store and you have a problem and you tweet about it, there's a group that's going to respond and take care of your issue, right? If you saw a post that you liked and you wrote about that, there's somebody that's going to respond to that. That all falls into social listening. Brand fans, well, we have them too, and we send them offers and we talk to them and we engage with them. But that's something different too. But when you're really talking about advertising and getting a new customer in and thinking about how do I get you into the store, how do I drive consideration, these are all very bottom of the funnel metrics, right? So how do we think about that? How do we really change the game and start thinking about it differently? And so one of the ways that we wanted to do that is we wanted to actually look at a mature category, mature medium. So we thought about TV. Why can't we think about TV? Well, so for TV, you have copy testing, in-flight effectiveness tracking, and we have our sales attribution. These are all very top of the funnel metrics, right? From how you flight your creative for brand and message recall and how you think about that, right? From Nielsen and whatnot and copy testing. But these give you diagnostics on the creative and why something resonated and what's really behind it. And as social really starts to become such a powerful engine and it becomes more pay to play, where you actually have to buy that media and you can't just serve it up to your fans anymore, well, how do we become more like this? So today what I want to take you through is our copy testing piece of this. So we really wanted to push the envelope and say, how do you do copy testing in social? And this is probably a question that they've never heard before, but we wanted to really pose it to them and say, how do we do it? And how do I think about that? So if we were to dig into copy testing for a second, this is kind of my 3 things that I would say to anybody that's thinking about how do you go do copy testing for social. So my first would be find some really great partners, because what I would say is that it takes a couple to really think about how to tackle such a big issue. So for this, for example, for Zappy brought to us the technical aspect of it. They brought to it something that's automated, quick, because social is, I mean, it's rapid, right? It's always changing. It's not like TV where you have something on TV for weeks and weeks on end and you're copy testing and thinking and looking at the GRPs. This is very different. And so we needed something quick and automated, but we also needed something that understood our business. And so that was added value. So give you a little bit more background into Zappy. Zappy is an automated partner of ours that's been critical in getting everything up to speed for us. They do great data visualization, which has really helped us as AT&T to move quick and be agile and give our agency and our media teams great information on the fly. It's also been an efficient end-to-end process, which they're going to talk through a little bit more. And because they have a startup mentality, and this was such a big, gnarly issue that we were trying to get through, that they brought to the table some really kind of out-of-the-box creative thinking, which was very helpful. And then added value. Added value has been doing work for us, for AT&T, for over 30 years. They know our business in some respects probably better than I do. And so they knew how to think about it, what questions to put into a survey, how do you take something automated with a new supplier that's coming in and bring with it that whole host of insights from a very experienced supplier that's known our business for a really long time and understands how to put those things together in a collaborative setting. And they have a proven approach. They do all of our TV, and they know what metrics work for that. And they see from our TV what's worked, what hasn't, and they can help consult on that. So then that takes us to the second point, which is ask the right question. So when you come up with something so out of the box, like copy testing for social, where you're doing so many on an ongoing basis, you've got to ask the right question to make sure that when these two groups get together, they're answering the right question for you and they're not spinning their wheels doing something different. So what was the right question? The right question for us at AT&T, and every business is different, was I wanted to start with creative diagnostics. Why does certain creative work better for engagement rates? And why does it work better for higher metric funnels? Or consideration for that matter. Very different. Sometimes we saw that our consideration was actually high, but likelihood to engage with the creative was low. Well, why did that happen? What can we learn from that? And then that takes us to a really high top of the funnel metrics, which is brand and message recall. If somebody clicked on my creative, engaged with it, said they liked it, it was funny, but they didn't remember it was AT&T, does that matter? I would argue it probably doesn't. So how do we actually get smarter about that? How do we drive home the brand more? And the last part is, how do we start to make better creative? How do I take those insights and actually turn that over to the agencies, turn that over to my media partners and to my creative partners, and make sure that they're getting to optimizing in a more efficient manner? So I'm going to let them take over for the next part after I ask them those questions.
All right, so I'm going to take over at this point and talk about the collaboration process between Ryan and I. It was definitely. So anyway, as we kind of started this process, we went to, we had a little workshop session down in Atlanta, and we basically locked ourselves in a room for a half day. And basically Ryan and his team and my copy test team, we all kind of talked through what we were bringing to the table. So we really kind of laid out what we did when it came to copy testing, the kind of questions we asked, what we were doing in different channels, whether it was TV or something else, digital. And Ryan really walked us through the technology and kind of what the ZappiStore was normally doing in kind of their normal product, and then if we were going to create something custom for AT&T, what kind of things you could do on that front. And we did that for 6 months, and Ryan posted this on Twitter, which I thought was appropriate for this presentation. You know, it was a really big success. One of the big outcomes that came out of it was we had very clear swimming lanes, and it was really clear that we were going to go do this, he was going to go do that, here are the deadlines set up, and we set up a very aggressive timeline. And we were really kind of thrown back, like, can we really make this, right? And you know, as we started going, we both just brought our A game the whole time and met our deadlines, and we were able to kind of produce this great product.
So I'm going to talk a bit about some of the things that we focused on from a collaborative standpoint. And I think in this day and age in the industry, collaboration is king, right? So the first thing that we had to do was suspend our collective agendas. Added value has partnerships in technology spaces. We have partnerships in creative spaces, but the ultimate thing we need to focus on was what does the business need and the impact desired from AT&T's perspective. So that workshop was literally all about, if that's the starting point, how do we back ourselves into it? The other thing that's really key was speed's important, as Brooke noted. Social's moving fast, it's failing fast, and it's crucial. However, we could not sacrifice the analytical rigor of the metrics that AT&T has trusted for so many years. So finding that balance was super important, which brings us to the last point. So one of the biggest topics that we had to work ourselves through on that workshop was, yes, we'd like to ask this battery of 20,000 questions, and that'd be awesome. But what is the questionnaire that we need in its most minimal sense to give us a viable insight that's going to deliver on short-term social optimization and then long-term strategic development? And that was, I hate clutter, so that was one of the most fun work meetings I've ever had. So that was really what we were focusing on as we go through. So just to wrap up, we're going to share a bit about what we learned, and that should leave a little bit of time for Q&A.
Okay, so there's 4 big learnings that we kind of thought in retrospect, worked really well. The very first one is something we call put client first. As we all know, we all have companies that have been around, and we all have our procedures, and we have our mandates, and whatever you want to call it, even red tape. And it becomes a challenge, right? Especially when you want to produce something quick and efficient and fast. And what we really found was when you kind of just put the client first, and that's the focus, and we both had a relationship with Brooke, and there was really no kind of territorial issues there. We were both kind of focused on getting the job done. It seemed to work really well. We were able to kind of get a process up and going pretty quickly, and it worked pretty efficiently. The second one was appreciate what makes the other great. The thing that I said earlier about swing lanes really kind of keys in on this learning. There's a lot of times where, whether your company or my company, we want to own the whole thing. It made a lot more sense for us to just focus on the IP of the copy test and our learnings there and what we kind of have learned over the years from that consulting perspective. Where I think what we found really great was you guys focused on the tech, you had this platform set up, where you were able to kind of make it custom for the business needs for Brooke. And when you do that, all of a sudden, everything runs a lot more efficient because everyone's kind of doing their thing and doing it really right, the best foot forward kind of thing.
And so that really translates to, I think, a major shift we're seeing in our industry. We saw custom shops, we saw DIY survey shops, both filling a place in the long term today, yesterday. What makes this program work and what will make it work in the future is two things. One, we're tying automation with methods that are validated. And the second is we know, the three of us, that this isn't perfect today, it's not going to be perfect tomorrow. So we've set ourselves up for something that's going to deliver value today, but also leave a lot of leeway for us to improve as we go forward. So you'll hear, I think, all three of us talk about agile, probably to the point where it gets annoying, but it works because it allowed us to deliver on something to quickly address a business need, and then on a daily basis, really just improve. So it's fun. And you know, if we're all sitting here today, there's some social media platform that some smart team in Silicon Valley is coding right now that we haven't heard of yet. We wanted to make sure we had the flexibility to be live there when that happened. And by being nimble and on an agile way, that really helped us get there. We haven't had a timer this whole time, so I think we have some time for questions. And if anybody has any, we'd love to take them.
Hi, this is a question for Jeff and Brooke, really. I think the thing about the biggest problem in trying to make research more agile, a lot of the time, is cutting back on that questionnaire content that you talked about. And there's always someone in the organisation, whether it's an AT&T or Added Value, who wants that extra question in, and you want more and more questions. How did you address that internally? How did you force it to become a genuinely lean tool?
Yeah, I can start with that. So I think that it came really from both Jeff's team and from internally from my team, taking a really hard look at that. From Jeff's perspective, they have so much data from us that they could go back and say what was meaningful, what was not. But also from my side, we knew what inherently translated to social. From a creative standpoint, some of it's not just about metrics, right? I mean, some of it's actually about what you can actually change and optimize on and create from an agency standpoint. So there might be some metrics that might be interesting to know, but you can't really do anything with it from a media or creative standpoint in the social space versus TV. And so we did take a hard look at that. And really kept a focus on what the outcome was going to be. The outcome of this was media, agency creative, and constant optimization of understanding why some of our metrics were turning out the way they were. So, yep.
How are your agencies working with it now? How is that translated? Have they embraced it, or are they in the process?
Yes, so our agencies have absolutely embraced it, wholeheartedly actually. I think for them it was a welcomed change because they were being held to KPIs of engagement rates. But when you think about advertising doesn't necessarily have to be about engaging with the creative. That doesn't make, when you think about TV and you think about what makes creative powerful on TV, It's not because you talk about it. And so for them, it kind of elevated the conversation to a new level that they were really appreciative of. It also gave them insights into what was really working well that they didn't know about, especially from some of our target groups. So I think it's already been a really welcome change, very helpful, and really elevated the conversation too. Even if, let's say, a creative wasn't working, this helped us to understand why it wasn't working and gave them some insights. So when they went back to the AT&T folks internally, talked to their clients, the agencies could say, okay, well, this didn't work, but we know why now. And we can actually iterate and change that. Any other questions? Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.